What's going on? Coach Luca here at Vigor Ground Fitness and Performance in the back with the tires because there's a lot of locomotion going on there. Today, I'm going to go over let's just say that like coaching cues and the things that go wrong with rows. Now, I'm going to use basically the bench and some variations here, but I'm also going to like stand up and just give a couple of variations, show you how you can kind of transfer what I'm going to teach you here into like a standing row, which we'll use the band for. But you know, when you're in the gym, like any cable variation with the row, this goes for pretty much anything rowing, right? Any implement, whether it's kettlebells, sandbag, bands, cables at the gym, it doesn't really matter, right? The form on this ends up being, I would say, very similar. Now we're going to start off with one thing that kind of determines almost, or should I say, all the different things we'll talk about end up bringing in almost the same thing, which is this. It's called anterior humeral glide, but really what it just means is that your shoulder is not in a good position when you're rowing. And you'll see this a lot when somebody rows and you see that shoulder moving forward, the elbow is super far back behind the body versus basically rowing from a position of the shoulder being in a good position and the scapula moving on the rib cage. So you'll see this if we're doing this row with, I would say, a 2-point position. When somebody comes up, you can see how my shoulder is gliding forward, and that actually definitely hurts me, right? So you want the shoulder to be in a good position. And now, if I had my hand here, I wouldn't feel my shoulder slide forward. Now, if you're doing it with a band, imagine that you could actually, or a cable, you could put your hand on a shoulder and know whether the humeral head is gliding forward or not. You can feel it. Okay? So that's the number one thing. Now, as we move forward from this, and you know, how do you coach it? How do you cue it? Well, on a bench when we have a 2-point stance here, a great way of doing this is, first of all, like this hand can be, if you're just kind of like sitting onto this shoulder, first of all, you don't have your core activated. So we push away. As soon as I push away here, I get engagement. I get a better position of the upper body and back. Okay, and from here, I'm going to go shoulder into the socket. And as you can see from the side, right, my elbow is not going to go far behind my body. As soon as I go too far, you know that the shoulder is going to start moving forward. Right, so the second cue, I say thing to watch out for here is if you have your arm close to the body. Now this goes for push-ups as well. Like, so I'm going to kind of go a little bit wider. Anytime we have the arm close to the body, you can't really go far back because you can see how it slips forward. So the analogy that I give is like being able to, you can say 30, 35 degrees, but I like to just say, hey, there should be able to be about a fist in between here, I'd say your lat and your elbow, right? So this far in between. So when I'm rowing, if you look at me from here, right, rather than getting it close, which you can see my shoulder sliding forward, I'm bringing the elbow out a little bit. So I'm creating some space, right? Now in that position, like I said, if I was standing here, difference. Now, if you watch me from the front, and I'm in this good position with 30, 35 degrees distance here, watch what happens when I just bring the elbow close. It glides forward automatically, right? So here I'm good. If I come close, bad position. So even though we're talking about the row, think about the push-up position, same thing. If we're close, a lot of people just can't get there with the shoulders in a good position. But if I go out to 30, 35 degrees to the side, much better position. Right, so number 3, I'm just gonna not even like I would say number them, but just go into different things that can go wrong. Then we got forward head posture, right? Now many times when you're tight in your thoracic spine on your upper back, what can happen is you try to get range by moving your head forward. So I'm gonna row, and once I get to here and I don't get a lot of range of motion, you'll see this. because you get the feeling of getting more range of motion out of it, right? So the great thing about that is the cue that I showed, obviously, at least when we're in this 2-point position, if we drive this hand down, it's a lot easier to keep your neck in a neutral position. And I always like to think, like if you had a tennis ball here and we're kind of grabbing it with your neck, it keeps you neutral. So I'm here, I'm pushing away, elbows goes out, and you'll see that what ends up happening is you don't get much, you feel like the range of motion is shorter, but you get much more tension in your back and your lats, okay? Now, from here on, this is the cue that for a long time, and I'll admit to it, like, you know, years ago, we'd always go like, pack your shoulder, pack your shoulder, pack your shoulder, right? So basically, what that means is pack it down, right? The problem with it is, if you look at someone like me who's an extension, right, and I'm in lumbar extension, so my lats are already tight. Remember, lats attach into your low back, so they're already tight, pulling me down. With someone that is in that position, to try to depress even more, actually creates this anterior glide again that we were talking about at the beginning. So if somebody's already got very depressed, like downward sloped shoulders, right, we actually don't want to cue them even further down, okay? So in that case, one, you don't cue it. For some, it might even be good to get a little shrug, not an aggressive shrug, but a little shrug. Because if I cue, even with me, and if I pack my lat aggressively, you can see how I start moving forward. So I'm not even going to cue it. Now, if I'm super depressed, I could even get a little bit of a shrug, and that's going to help out, okay? So what I'm saying is that we have to look at the individual, because the next mistake is somebody that is super shrugged up, maybe because they had some type of injury, rotator cuff issue, whatever it may be, right? You'll see people that row in a very shrugged position, so they're rowing, and you can see this humongous shrug happening, which is usually going to make the head posture knock forward as well, right? With that person that's like very, very shrugged, we are going to cue it down a little bit, right? So all that means is that you have to watch out for each person individually, and there aren't any, I should say, just cues there are cues that everybody can use, but to just like put a square peg through a round hole or the other way around, it's just not going to work. So we have to look at the individual, what shoulder issues they've had, what their posture is in a static way, what happens when they row, and then cue it that way. So depending on where you are, maybe, like I said, you have this pattern when you're shrugging lat, you may want to depress a little bit, or you may be very, very, I would say, depressed in your lats, and you might have to shrug a little bit. Okay, from there on out, we're going to go. Now you can see how all of this comes together. It kind of creates the same issue as we talked at first, right? Next thing is going to be going into lumbar extension. So if you look at my low back, right, if I'm in this position and all of a sudden you see this overarching, right, it creates a lot of problems. Overarching is usually going to create the forward head posture. If I overarch, it's also going to probably most likely create this anterior glide. But what ends up happening is we're already tight. So think about this. The lats attached down here, right, into the thoracolumbar fascia. So if we go even more into extension, right, we're basically shortening and tightening everything up if the lats are already tight. So we don't want that. The other thing that it does, it takes us out of good core positioning, right? So if I'm in extension, even here, my abs are not really working well. A lot of times what this tends to create is also this rotation in the low back, which most people don't talk about. So I'm out of a good position for the core. I start rowing and rotating. And you'll actually, many times in this position, you can feel adductor issues, but if we're standing, it's the same thing. I'm here in this position, core is not activated, and you'll see us moving through the low back, right? So it starts creating a lot of different issues. Now the fix here is, at least if we're down on the bench, it's great because as soon as we start pushing away, right, what tends to happen is we engage the core. I also like to have a breathe out. So when we're here, somebody's very in extension, I'm gonna push this away. Right, so like I said, if somebody's in this position, we like to get full exhalation, get that rib cage down, then take a breath of air, right, and we add the push. It gets us nice and tight, and we're moving from the right places. Okay, so think about that. Staying in extension, how we get out. Now, if we're standing, same thing. If I'm doing a cable roll standing, right, full exhalation, rib cage is down. I'm gonna get my neck nice and neutral. Elbow's gonna come out to the side, but this is solid. So it ends up becoming core work as well, right? The next thing that we need to watch out for is this rounded upper back kyphotic posture, right? And I definitely have some of that, so I'm a good example for coaching and cueing in this one. And remember, you can have lumbar extension and then this posture. This is actually pretty prevalent now when you look at like how I sit on a chair, because I don't sit straight up and then round at the top. I actually sit back into extension and then round this way, right? So we have to get the rib cage down, but then in this position we'll have to, what I like to say, open up the clavicles, right? That's one of my favorite coaching cues for that, right? I'm in this position and I get my rib cage down. Now I'm somewhat rounded. My cue here is push away and then open up the clavicles. Now I feel my mid and low traps right now, not even lifting a weight. So I'm keeping that. Abs are tight now. Elbow comes out to the side. All right, so a lot of different things change because, once again, rather than saying big chest, I like to think like you're ripping your clavicles apart, because now it creates this posture and my shoulder's in a better position. Okay, so thinking about like not only what positions we want to be in, but the coaching cues to get there, right? Last one with the row is avoiding moving from the elbow. What I mean by that is, if you watch me from the side and I roll like this, right? I'm not moving my scapula on my shoulder blade, right? Which allows me to only get to right about here. You're not going to have much more than this angle in a row, right? So if you see this row happening and I'm pulling from the elbow, right? You usually see this anterior glide as well. Bicep is going to get like kind of shredded up, not in a good way, right? And you'll see this kind of like this, right? I'm moving from the elbow. So all my movements coming from the elbow versus, right, scapula on a shoulder blade, okay? So you can see how many of the issues create the same problems, right? Anterior humeral glide, so that shoulder moving forward, forward head posture, extension, lats getting packed down, okay? And the reason why I wanted to shoot this video is because the tendency of, smart programming and talking about people are very rounded from this, say, office posture, and that too many people are doing, a lot of bench pressing, a lot of pushing movements and not enough rowing movements. So the tendency then becomes like, okay, let's program better and put in more pulling movements into the program. But the problem is like if we put in pulling movements and the posture is not right and the cueing is not right, and we're basically creating the similar issues that we would with pressing, right? Because we're still aggravating the shoulder, we're still aggravating the back, so all these different things. So with this, I just wanted to show, now remember, with this example, I have points of contact. This could be a 3-point row, and we'd be looking at the same things, right? So if it's a 3-point row, and I'm here, I'm doing the same, I'm basically paying attention the same way. If I'm standing, if I'm on a T-bar row, Obviously it's supported, but I'm looking at the same things. Okay, so look at certain things that you may not be applying into your rowing movements and just kind of go through the technicalities and some things that you could improve, and watch now how much better you feel, but how much more you get out of the exercise. So not as this only, I don't say corrective, it's smart, so it'll prevent you from injuring yourself, but also what it'll do is you'll get more out of the exercise from performance standpoint. And if you're, like I said, if you're trying to build muscle, guess what? More tension in the right places is going to help you build muscle. All right, so Coach Luke is out. Hope you liked the rowing video, and I'll see you again soon.